thank you so much for coming and attending. I see some current students and friends and a few former students too, so thank you so much for your attendance. This is Cultivating Creativity, Original Character Designs. My name is Katie Cunningham. I'm the visual arts teacher at MacArthur Fundamental here in Santa Ana. I teach 6th through 8th grade, and this is my email address, katie.cunningham@sausd.us, and I'll broadcast this at the end of my session too, in case you'd like to contact me. And I wanted to start just by sharing how different this school year has been for obvious reasons, so we can put some of the student artwork in context. So last year, our art class was obviously in person. This is a picture of our classroom. And then all of our classwork was done in the actual art studio using our studio materials. Students rarely worked on anything that was at home just to try to preserve the artwork and not have it damaged in process going from home to school so many times. And so everything was done in that actual physical space. And compare that to this year where we are completely virtual, and we have been for the entire school year. Everything is done at home, all using personal materials or the materials they picked up, the students picked up at school, and they are photographing their work to submit it, which comes with some obvious problems. They had to learn how to photograph their work, how to light and crop their work, and how to use the technology. So there have been some challenges. They have been overcoming them really well and adapting to all of this. And we've also had some benefits too to the technology. We've used a lot of online tutorials. We've taken a few virtual field trips to museums. So we have been trying to work around with what we have. So I wanted to share what it is that the students were working on and what I'll be broadcasting in this presentation. We worked on something called a concept art project. And out of all of our projects, this was the one that I really wanted to share because it showed such an incredible amount of creativity and hard work that my students demonstrated. The task was to create a concept art drawing of an original character, so one that would be appropriate for some sort of popular media, by which I meant a TV show, movie, book, graphic novel or comic, or a video game. And in addition to the actual artwork, I asked my students to create this character's backstory, or at least a piece of the backstory, and describe his, her, their, or its unique qualities, and then present that character to the class. So the characters that my students came up with were not only interesting, but really wide-ranging, from heroes and villains, animals, machines, people with special abilities, mythical characters, gender non-binary characters, all sorts of different classes and representations in all of these characters. And I'll get to show these to you at the end of my presentation in our virtual gallery. So just to clarify what concept art really is, typically concept art is the type of art that an illustrator would use to pitch a particular idea for some sort of form of popular media. For the purpose of this particular assignment, I asked my students to create a high quality illustration that captured their idea for an original character. So it would be their own original idea for a character. I asked my students to come up with a fully formed, specific idea for their character that could actually exist in media. So I wanted to share with you behind the scenes here. So beyond this being just a fun activity, the guiding questions here behind the assignment was, where do creative ideas come from? In other words, how can an artist increase his or their creativity? Where does an artist come up with an idea that is original? For a lot of professional artists, especially illustrators who work on deadlines, you can't sit around and just wait for a visit from the muse. You have a deadline, you have to come up with an original idea and on a particular timeline. So what I wanted to do with this assignment was not only learn about concept art, but sort of demystify the creative process and see how can we encourage creativity and go after really unusual or interesting ideas. So here's one little example from my student Ethan, with this character with the brain outside of his body. So here was our process. It was a large unit. We first gained some background knowledge about what was concept art. So we looked at examples from popular media, from Disney Pixar. Then we moved into some skill building. And I see this is a nice example from one of my students, Jayin. So we practiced some basic cartooning, illustration techniques, and then we finally moved into the creative process. So creating characters from different facial features and then practicing some randomness and seeing what that randomness brought us. So for the background knowledge, there's so much information online with Disney Pixar and their creative processes. There are all sorts of documentaries about it. There's a series on Disney Plus right now about behind the scenes in Pixar. So we learned about the overall purpose of concept art and the overall animation process. We looked at some examples of concept art in general and how it leads to the development of a character. And then the fun part was to compare some early Disney Pixar concept art sketches to the final drafts, because things change so much from the original conception of an idea to what the final drawing or character looks like can be very, very different depending on how many hands are involved. And so that was really interesting for students. And I feel like that really motivated them because they could see the process coming to life. After that, we worked on skill building, and students practiced with some cartoon forms, construction lines, guidelines. We did a little bit of practice with some facial expressions. We watched some tutorials on how you can create your character and control your character. And this was a really important step because this was what helped students gain the confidence that they needed to improve their ability to convey their idea, but it also helped those students with less experience so that they could actually render their idea and not just have it stuck in their head. They knew some of the basic things that you would need to do to bring that character to life on the page. So this is a character that was drawn by my student Jocelyn. She's practicing with underdrawing. So she has the blue guidelines, trying to get the form in place, and then she's practicing with this particular love struck face and the funny thought bubble above the head. So here are a few more skill building examples. On the left, this is my student Ezekiel's work. He's practicing with pose, with gesture, trying to bring the form to life from head to toe. And then here on the right is my student Melody, who was working again on underdrawing. So trying to use those guidelines, build the basic shapes, and then put the finishing touches, the final gesture lines over the top of that. So after we did background knowledge and we learned our skills, then it was time to talk about creativity and how we can find spontaneity. So the person that we, whose work that we looked at for this step, his name is Stefan Bucher. He's originally German and he now lives in Southern California. He's a fairly well-known illustrator, and he has a particular technique that he uses, a method for creating monsters. And what he does is he relies on randomness as a starting point. So he will start with a puddle of ink or paint and then use some compressed air to blow that ink around in a random way. So you can see that right here with all the splatters. And then he comes in and he creates an actual character out of that randomness. And he discusses, he has all sorts of videos on his website, which is dailymonster.inc. And he shows you his methods in real time. And he discusses that he never knows who he's going to discover, which opens him up to all sorts of possibilities. He has no control over the splatter. He just looks into the splatter and tries to find a particular character. Here's another example, again, by Stefan Bucher. This is just a bunch of different colored inks that are all put together. You can even see the little can of compressed air. It's literally just air in a can. And he sprays the air through the ink, creates that splatter, turns his page around different times, and tries to figure out who he can find inside of that splatter. So we did not have the same materials as Stefan Bucher, so we decided to do something similar, but with what we had. And so we created Scribble Creatures. So our creative exercise was to fill a page with impromptu sketches, not plan anything in advance. Actually, some of the students had to turn away from their page so that they were forcing themselves not to plan anything. And then literally to just look and see, who do you find in all of the scribbles? So do you find a human, an animal, a monster, a robot, who's there. And then anything that was a good idea, you could develop into a bigger character. So my character that I actually ended up developing has a little star next to it right here. I'll show you how that developed in just a moment. But this is my class example that I did with my students. So here are some student scribble creatures. These were all just from complete randomness, putting scribbles down on the page and then seeing who you find. So Liliana, Sebastian, and Jason. Interesting characters here. And not everyone found a character that they liked. Sometimes it didn't work for the students. It was not 100% successful. And sometimes the creatures or characters that students found did not end up being their final idea. So they might have put this to the side entirely. And here are a few more examples. So Victoria and Elena. So once we practiced this idea, it was time to develop a more serious idea, or the bigger idea. So what I did for my students was to model using the random scribble and developing that into a page of practice sketches. So I found one particular character that I thought I could work with. This character that I've circled here basically just appeared. All I had to do was add the mouth and color it and add a little bit of the neck. And then I turned that into a whole page of practice sketches and tried out different variations. So facial expressions, different body types, how I wanted this character to exist on the page. And for those students who didn't find anything in their random scribbles, they would just tap into their imagination. So it could have been that the scribble sketches worked really well. For other students, they just jumped into an idea that came to them and started working on practice sketches. So they experimented with variations. I asked them to consider facial expression, posture, the direction of the character, any action or movement that they might want to show in their work. And this is a nice piece by my student Adrian, who's trying all sorts of different angles of his particular character. And then it was time for the final draft. So this final draft of the character was the point for students to really show off all of their skill building and to put all of that together in one final project. So we put all of the techniques that we learned, any underdrawing that might have helped them. And I also asked them to consider style. So consider where you want this character to actually appear, anime or some sort of an animated movie or a book, a children's book, and then use that to guide you with your style. And then we added details and pitched our ideas. So my students' presentations included an introduction of the character. So what media might would this character appear in, and what would this character's role be? So would it be a main or supporting role? A description of the character, their abilities, their unique qualities, powers, a little bit of the background summary, and then also a discussion of where this character came from. Again, to kind of like peek behind the curtain and share with the class, well, where does your idea come from? How did you come up with this? And was it difficult to come up with this, or did it just come to you? What was the process? So I'm about to show you my video compilation of some highlights of these projects. What you'll see is the practice sketches that the students did, and then their final draft. So this is a nice example from my student Jocelyn. She has her practice sketches here on the left. She's isolating different areas of the character, trying to figure out the wardrobe of the character, the color of the hair. The final draft is in the middle here, and then this is the majority of her background story, the origin story for this character, Farah, who was half human, half alien. Her mother was a human, her dad was an alien. And then the highlighted part I have here is if this movie were, if this were in a movie rather, we would see from when she was born and her entire journey as a half alien in the regular world. So it's almost like Jocelyn's elevator pitch for Farah. What would this movie be all about? So without further ado, I'm going to play you the highlight reel of these characters. So that is the highlight reel. And finally, I'd like to conclude with just some final comments. So most importantly, I just wanted to thank all of my my art students for their incredible work. It's been such a treat to see the great things that they come up with, even though we're at home. It's been really delightful to see all their creativity and the continued hard work that they put into their art, which is really just really inspiring. So thank you to all of my students, and thank you to those former students who are here. I am so glad that you're here. My contact information is katie.cunningham@sausd.us. And we also have more student artwork online. So we have a virtual gallery on our website, macarthurartstudio.com. And we're also on our Instagram account, which is @MacArthurArtStudio. Thank you so much for attending the session today. I can stay for just a few minutes and answer any questions that you may have, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival. Well, thank you, Ms. Skipper. I appreciate that. So question by Sienna, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everyone. To answer the question, oh, Luani, thank you so much. That is so sweet. Thanks, Luani. Have a nice weekend. To answer the question about the images, the high quality images, we did a whole discussion about how you can take a good photo of art and what makes a good photo and what makes a not so great photo. It usually requires either going outside or standing next to a window, and that usually solves some of the problems. But you know, a few of the images I was able to lighten. It seems like they end up just kind of becoming dark, and that becomes an issue. There's nothing really to be done about blurry images, but we do the best we can. So we talked a lot about it is the short answer. We discussed it. Oh, wait. Okay, I think that is all questions. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Katie. This is Stephanie Butler here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, I teach middle school over in Irvine Unified. I just wanted to compliment you and your students on your work.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm sorry, your last name was?
Butler, Stephanie Butler.
Hi, nice to meet you. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
What school do you?
I'm over at Jeffrey Trail. We're close to the 5 and Jeffrey and Tribuco. And I've been there since we opened, but I live here in Santa Ana, and I have always wanted to peek in and see what you guys are doing here. I'm so proud and happy to see this.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming. Thank you.
My pleasure. So make sure you give your kids a good thumbs up. That was excellent work.
Thank you. I definitely will.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
May I ask a question, teacher?
Sure.
Mr. I have 2 students in MacArthur, and one of my kids would like to join art. When is the best way to enroll him in art?
He's a current student right now?
Yes. He has the elective band, and my another son has Spanish on electives, because I saw it's on the electives classes, right?
Yeah, they actually, I believe that they actually started the process either this week or they're going to next week, where counselors are discussing what the elective choices will be for next year, and then students will have the opportunity to sign up. So there's no prerequisite for Art 1. That's just the intro art class that we have on campus. There's an Art 2 class that's for only 8th graders, which requires either some experience, so you've either taken Art 1 or you have an application that you can turn in, but he or she can just sign up, and that's all it really takes. So, but you can email me if you have some follow-up questions about that.
Okay.
I can help you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will. Thank you.
All right. And are there any other questions?
Great job, Miss Cunningham.
Wallace, hi. Let's see. I don't know how many people are in my room anymore. Here we go. I think my tech support, did my tech support leave me? Oh no, they're still here.
No, we're here.
Okay.
Well done.
I don't know how hard of a cutoff we need at 7:01.
No, you're good. If anybody else has questions.
All right, I guess we are done. Well, thank you for attending.
Awesome.
Tech support for supporting. That was much easier knowing that I didn't have to admit people from the waiting room.
No worries.
All right, well, have a good evening. Thank you so much, everybody.
You too. Bye.